Welcome to the Inspiring Veterans Podcast with your host, Gary Rohmann. In each episode of the Inspiring Veterans Podcast, veterans coach Gary Rohmann invites veterans and professionals who support veterans to discuss the process of transitioning out of armed service into civilian society. The Inspiring Veterans Podcast aims to answer the question, what's next? You can find the show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, GaryRohmann.com. Now here's the host of the Inspiring Veterans Podcast, your host, Gary Rohmann.
Welcome, everybody. This is Gary Rohmann, the Veterans Coach, and thanks for tuning in. And I really have a great guest today that I'm just been excited that I can have a chance to interview him and ask him questions about his service, as well as some of the great things he's doing today to help veterans as in the transition process. As you know, my videos are focused on the challenges that veterans have when they transition out of the military. So with that said, Joseph Molina, welcome.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you for the invitation. So it's my pleasure to be here.
Well, Joe, I'm glad we could work it out. I know you're a busy man, and we'll probably talk about this later, but just for everybody's awareness, I work closely with Joe on a lot of different things, and Joseph is the kindest person you'll ever meet. And he's also a very smart guy. So, Joseph, tell us about your veteran background.
Well, thank you for that intro, Gary. Really appreciate it. Well, I'm a veteran, Army veteran. And because I'll tell you though, when I was a kid, as a teenager, you go to those evaluations in school, and those career evaluations, and coming from a structure education into the Boy Scouts, so it's always been in a structure's always been part of kind of my life. So one of the main things that came out of my academic projections was military. So like, that makes sense. So and always kind of wanted to kind of follow into that after growing up and going into another facet in my life. So I always thought the career in the military was something that was a good fit for me. And I think this is also a great way to contribute. And also, this is just my personal opinion, but it's something that it kind of shows and could be or should be something that everyone should have the opportunity to experience. And it is, as you probably know, and it's a tough experience. Nothing is what it seems. So when I decided to sign up and enlist, I was in college already. So I went into a kind of extended enrollment, if you will, until I completed that particular part of the college. And so I went to the recruiting station, and you go into and do the interviews and stuff, and they ask you, where do you want to go? So I have choices. Perfect. So I selected, of course, California. I selected Hawaii. It's nice and warm, and Germany. And I thought, Germany would be an interesting place to visit. So I got my orders, and I went did all the basic training and all that stuff. When I got my final orders, it was for Alaska. So like, not even in the map, not even in the plan. But I'll tell you, Gary, I think making for the military to make that decision for me, it was a tremendous experience. I mean, if you're stationed in Alaska, you get to experience things that you probably never really thought about. It's like when it gets cold, it's freezing, freezing cold, and when it gets hot, it's mosquitoes galore. So it's definitely they get you one way or the other.
Yeah.
But being in an area like that and having to experience what cold, really cold means, and I mean we couldn't run unless we have our mouths covered because you freeze your lungs. That's how cold it gets. Uh, when you throw up coffee up in the air, it just crystallizes. It doesn't. There's no longer liquid. I mean, just up in the air, and that's it. And experiencing almost a 24, 20-hour sunlight. That was a kicker. So a lot of experiences that really went into enhance my time in the military. And during that time, as you know, I'm a faculty. Some education is very important to me, and so while going in the military, I was also completing my degrees. So I was attending university in different places, Alaska University, University on base. I traveled to I traveled to this Air Force base. It was just maybe like 30 minutes from the Army base. They had classes there for that I could take for my degree. And every time I went to the Air Force base, I had to pass the Santa Claus house because we were north of the North Pole. So I had to pass the Santa Claus house, which is right at the center of the North Pole area. So it was a tremendous experience. But bringing to the question that you asked before, and the kind of the theme of the conversation is what happens afterwards. Once you decide to, okay, they ask you to, okay, now you just, we want you out, or you decide to leave. What happens? And because when we are in, Gary, it is a different life. It is a different family. It's a different environment, and you feel home. You feel like you belong, and whether it's in uniform or not in uniform, you just feel different. It's just a different experience, a different theme, a different mindset. And then, so when you decide to leave, and or it's time to leave, you think, well, if I can do this, everything else is easy, right? I mean, so I call that now the Captain America syndrome. I label that Captain American syndrome, because when you're in and you're getting ready to leave, you can do anything you want. You have your shield, you're ready to go. But when you cross the gate, it's a different story.
Yeah. So Joe, let me ask you, how long you're in the Army, right? And
Yes.
how long were you in the Army?
6 years.
6 years. And just so happens you were talking about Alaska. I didn't wear the uniform, but my father did, and he was in the Air Force 23 years, and we were stationed in Alaska as well. He was stationed at Hickam Air Force Base, or not Hickam, but Elmendorf, and Fort Richardson at the time was right next to it. So now they're combined as one installation. So what exactly did you do in the Army, Joe?
Well, it's when I enlisted, I wanted to get an MOS that it will not really be conflicting with my education. So I went into logistics, supply, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But honestly, Gary, it was not challenging for me. So, and there was this opportunity, this position to be the trainer officer or the training officer. And that's like, man, this is something that I want to do. That's something that but I was something that because I was not in long enough to actually do that, they kept pushing me off. And the commander at that time was pretty tough commander. So nobody really wanted to do the work because they had to work directly with that commander. But I was like, I don't care. That's what I want to do. So I did that. So for the time that I was in, most of the time, that's what I did. So my job was to design, schedule, prepare all the training activities, qualifications, whether it was rifle ranges or swimming or cold weather training, anything like that. There were requirements, as you know, requirements that we have to do every year to make sure that everyone is prepared.
Yeah.
You know?
So you were getting, I'm interrupted you. I think you were heading toward the transition part of it. So did you have a good transition when you left the
No,
Army?
I the quick answer for that is once, like I said, once the Captain America syndrome wears off, then the reality kicks in. Because as you see other people that you are working with on base and on any base, and that was my experience. I've also been on the base working with transition military for over 20 years. So it's like every time the mindset is like, I got this, I got this, I got this, I got this. So when you're talking to them, very few actually have an open mind to really see it. But it's not them to blame. It just is that Captain America syndrome. When that happens, like even in at the chamber, I don't expect to kind of serve primarily right away. I don't expect them to come in right away. Usually it takes in between 4 and 9 months when reality starts to kick in and the challenges start to face, especially when you have families, because then there's a transition that takes place. Like I mentioned to you, there's it's different culture. So when you're in, your mindset is different, your attitude is different, your personality is different, your environment is different. When you get out, you get kind of disconnected. You feel disconnected. Your mind feels disconnected. Your emotions feel disconnected because what you had before is different than what you're encountering. So a lot of times people think that veterans need jobs. We don't need jobs. We need purpose. We need a way to find that purpose. And because a job is a job, and all respectful. I mean, you can be cleaning toilets in anywhere, or serving anything, or cutting the grass somewhere, or being an engineer, or whatever that position is, whatever that job is a job. What is the difference? Because in the military, yeah, we do have jobs, but that's not what we are there for. That's not what we're identified with. Whether you do logistics, whether you do infantry, whether you do whatever you do, the job is not really what identifies us. Is the environment, the military mindset, the military umbrella that really kicks in, and that's what kind of sets up our personality, sets up our behaviors. So when we leave, that step in many cases becomes disconnected. So that purpose is missing. If like people who transition into similar positions, like firefighting, police officers, FBI, those kind of things, the transition is very similar, so the impact is less. But with someone who transitions into, let's say, they were sniper, or they were a medic, or they were anything like that, a paratrooper, whatever it was, and they transition into something, maybe they got a really great job offered at Walmart or Amazon, whatever. Still, there is a little bit of disconnect, and it doesn't happen to everyone. But in my experience, this is just my experience on the surveys, evaluations, research that we have done over 15 years. I will say over 75% to 80% of the people have challenges when we transition. and not just physical challenge, but also emotional challenges
Yeah.
that we have to learn to live with. And if you have a family, that enhances the challenge because we know what we're going through, but our spouses do not understand that. And that's another challenge.
Yeah.
So if the transition preparation doesn't include both, then we're only working on one half of the equation because the spouse doesn't understand it. Why someone is going like that. And I think it's also, um, all the services that offer to the transition members when they're getting out and all the things that they have to do. But in my opinion, this is just my opinion, I think the spouse should be the one that does that because we don't do anything. All the bills, all the setup for the utilities, the housing, all that kind of stuff, those are handled by our spouses, honestly. But we're still training, we're still in service. So before they move somewhere, our spouse are the ones handling that. So they are they're really ones that they're leading that charge. So I think the military should include that
Yeah.
component also in the transition.
So, it really, the different things you just shared, the challenges that veterans face and your experiences, was that the driving force to establish the National Veterans Chamber? Are you, maybe we can go there and you could describe a little bit more about the Veterans Chamber and what it does for veterans.
Well, uh, when I after the transition period, the adjustment period took place, and kind of you have to continue, right? And you have to find that purpose, had to find or reestablish your situation, and switch your mindset. It's all about the mindset, switching that mindset. Then, of course, you start finding your places, and networking became the key component of getting out of that funk, if you will. Because then you start talking to veterans and non-veterans, and you start finding your position. And and I understand that a lot of people in the community, they want to help the veteran, they want to give veteran a lot of stuff, and that's great. That's great. But that's also a not really great because we became stronger because of the training, because of the challenges. We don't get stronger because they make the military nice and soft. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if the training is about like a bodybuilder or a boxer. A boxer doesn't get good boxing because it sits on the couch and watches people box. It goes, becomes a good boxer because it competes and it practice and it challenges himself and have the coach who's challenging the boxer to become better, avoiding and hitting and taking stuff. Same thing with the veteran. We become good military because we are training all the time and we're focused on that. So in order to become better civilian veterans or become veterans, we have to continue that training. But that training is different. It's no longer military. We no longer have weapons. We have briefcases. we no longer carry a camouflage outfit. We carry suits. We wear suits. We wear different uniform. So that is the kind of the mindset that has to take place, and people who are preparing to move out of the military should start working on that to identify who they're going to be, not what they're going to do. It's a difference. What you're going to do has nothing to do with what you're going to be. So what you're going to do is easy. Like I say, you can do whatever. You can be an electrician, whatever. Who you're going to be is the key. But who you are dictates what you want to do,
Exactly.
not the opposite. So changing that mindset is who you are, who you want to be. It makes it easier for the transition. So to answer your question, so once I realized all this, my background is in psychology. A lot of part of my background is in psychology. So I study a lot of behavior I love psychology, so I love behavior. So over time, I started working with the bases under programs from the SBA. So we go to the military bases usually a couple of times a month to do training, to do education. I'm a faculty member, so I had classes at the university, and the university was also on base. So I got to see military both ways, as a client, like the way you see them on the transition, and as a students in my classes. And I'll tell you, the military student, by far the best. They don't fail. They don't miss. They just do what 100. They always give you the 100%. And I teach for different universities, for different colleges, and by far is the best student population ever. Now so that gave me the opportunity to analyze, evaluate, observe most of it, and see the different parts of what that was taking place. When it was time, after ending my contract with the SBA, I started, say, well, I want to continue the connection because there's a lot of need for people to transition and have a welcome wagon, if you will. So that's what a chamber is, because our chamber is not your typical chamber, as you know. We don't do the typical stuff. We don't charge to begin with. All veterans are free. Their family members are free. Like in your case, your dad was a veteran, that you can be part of the chamber as you are. So and you don't pay either. So we wanted to have a free way for people to enlist and enroll in the Chamber of Commerce, that it was free to them. So that's what we created, and it has no charge. People can donate if they want to, but it's no charge. Then we started working on just businesses, so the commerce side of it. So entrepreneurship was the first component that we started with. But this thing exploded, Gary. And I mean, not too long after we got started, it started expanding and exploding and expanding and exploding. And I said expanding because it was okay. If I'm going to do a business, what about I need training, I need education, and being an educator myself, an instructor myself. So well, that's easy. So we created the education component of it. So that's why we have entrepreneurship, education. Now you have entrepreneurship and education, then now you need employment. You can have self-employment, you can have employment. So we started helping people with employment. And I realized also that a lot of organizations do the basic resume writing, interview stuff, which we did that too under the soft skills program, but we left that for other organizations. What we focus on is like when you transition out of the military, I want them to be supervisors. I want them to be executives. I want them to be managers. They don't have to start all over again. They don't have to start at the bottom of the civilian ranks. You're not at the bottom. So when you transition out of the military, you have a level. And that level can be identified by receiving a certificate of supervision on management or leadership, depending on your level. So if you're a captain, or you're a lieutenant or you're a sergeant, those levels represent an equity level or equal level in the civilian market as a supervisor. So that's what we train. That's what we prepare people who are transitioned out of the military and becoming supervisors, becoming managers. We give them a certificate. So HR now understands. Oh, okay. So you know how to manage people. Otherwise, you can tell HR everything you want. Oh, we manage $50 million worth of this, and I manage this many troops. For the HR person, those things are irrelevant in most cases. Because okay, troops are troops. They don't understand that. Yeah. So you have to do a civilization or put it into civilian lingo, so that civilian HR person can understand what is it you're talking about. And it doesn't really matter the details of how you did, but what it matters is that you understand the concepts of communication, motivating employees, leadership, delegation, empowerment. Those are the key components of managers, of leadership. So we teach each of those individually so they get it. So when they go and apply for a job, they have a certificate that says, I have certificates on supervision. So they can apply for a manager position at a store or anywhere, or whatever level they want to apply for. It gives them that leverage, those points.
These courses, they're all online. Is that right?
They're all online. Yes, they're all online.
And so they're all provided through the Veterans Chamber?
Yes, and we use the same component Canvas, which is used by all the universities. So we use the same one, so everyone is familiar with it.
Gotcha. Okay. Mm-hmm. So you also do a weekly or monthly program, right?
We do a twice a month. We do the first and the third Friday of the month. And so the first Friday we have a guest, and then we have a segment, which that's the one that you present, and we're happy that you do that for us and with us, and because that kind of gives the transition base on what's happening. It keeps the transition and people aware that the chamber exists and what we do and how they can participate in the different programs, because our chamber is focused on programs and projects. So we don't have necessarily membership. We do. We have thousands of them, but we don't focus on that. We focus on programs and projects. So we partner with organizations like the county Department of Education, or we partner with housing development, all those things that we connect people. So when someone comes into us and they want to become a member, we ask them, how do you want to participate? Because for us, veterans, we're not receivers. We're not recipients. We're not receivers. I don't see that. We're empowered. So we give. So we continue to actively participate in the communities. And that's really what we promote. And we help individuals like yourself, for example. You're contributing, you're participating on base, and now you have different programs that you do. And so that's what we expect from veterans. When veterans ask me, what can you do for me? What the chamber can do for me? Like, well, that's the wrong question. The question is backwards. We're not here to give you anything. We're here to give you empowerment, or to empower you to do what you want to do as a civilian, now as a veteran. What do you want to do? And whatever you want to do, we can help you create. And that's something that we do really well. We'll help you create. So if they have a business idea, we help them create it. If they have a coaching idea, we help them create it. If they have a book they want to write, we help them create it. All those things, we teach them how it's done or how easily it's done, so they can do it. Not not just like say receive and receive. That's not our members. They don't really do that way.
So you've been the organization's been in existence how long?
So the chamber started in 2017.
Okay.
In 2017, and we started, like I said, just in the area of San Diego, but it wasn't before the end of the summer before we were expanded into other states. Because when we started the chamber, there were no really other chambers. Having a veteran chamber of commerce was a new concept. There was another chamber of commerce in, I believe, in New York, New Jersey, that we worked with, but that was it. They were the only ones. So now what we do is also help veterans create chambers if they want to have a chamber. So we give them the ABCs of how do you set up a chamber of commerce for veterans, local chamber of commerce for veterans. So right now we're working with one in the East Coast, and we're working with another group in Puerto Rico, and we serve as their mentors, just guide them. But they're in their own independent chambers. They do it's their own thing. We just want to help them build it and then collaborate with us.
Okay. So your website, give us your website. We're getting close to the.
It's VCCSD
Okay. And I've been on it several
That's all.
times. All your
Mhm.
programs are outlined there, right?
Yes, a lot of our programs are there. We have other special programs that we don't post on the website because the website is it started getting really huge. So instead of building more and more, kind of like the SBA website is huge, the VA website is huge. Like it's kind of hard to find things. So what we do now is when we have special programs or special projects, we create landing pages outside of the website, and then we promote for that particular program only. Like we have a housing for heroes program, and what the housing for heroes does is it helps military families in two different ways. One, if they can buy the house by themselves, help them through the process. We have an in-house broker, which you met. We have an in-house lender, mortgage lender, and so they take the whole process. The chamber is not a real estate at all on anything, but we bring these groups together so they can do the work and they have the licenses, so they help the veteran purchase their home. But also imagine this, Gary, especially in California, you want to buy a house in California. Well, house in California is expensive. One person cannot buy a house right now in many areas. You need more people. So we have a family program that brings together, let's say you have a niece or a nephew or a son or a daughter that they just got married and they want to buy a house, of course for their family, but they cannot afford it. How can they do that? So what we do is that we work with them, and then we work with you, you're the family member, to put the purchase in a family trust, in a family unit. So they are the owners of the property, and then we start inviting, or you start inviting members of the family who want to pitch in and invest as family members in that property. So now that couple now has the opportunity to purchase a home and maintain that property and maintain that mortgage on their own because they can now afford it to do the initial transition. So that's one of the programs under the Housing for Heroes. And then also, let's say, so you have someone who already has a home, but they have hiccups along the way. They can, they're having problems, and they may lose their property because they cannot make the mortgage payments. The chamber provides a fund that we help the family with $850, $1,000, $1,400 every month for up to 3 years to help them get the food up and get back on track. So we have programs like that. Again, they're not on the website, but those are special programs.
Well, Joe, that's fabulous. And so as we come to the end of our time here, and there's so many things we covered. I would just ask you one last question.
Sure.
What advice, the number one piece of advice you would give a veteran today that is in the process of getting out?
That's a hard one. But as I mentioned earlier, when someone is getting out, what they want to do is one. Who they want to be is number two. Who they want, and those are two options. The most important part of it, who do you want to be? And from there, you can do whatever.
Yeah.
Because who you want to be changes your mindset. If the mindset doesn't change, everything else stops. So the moment you can identify who do you want to be, then everything else just follows.
That's phenomenal. That is really a tremendous note to end on. As I do these transition workshops to military, we bring them in and they have 2 days to come to grips with what they're going to do. That's virtually impossible. But nevertheless, we give them the basics of a resume, a professional introduction, how to network. But the big missing piece is, what do you want to do? Where you want to go? And that takes time. That takes
No,
time.
it
And
really
you
does.
hit it right on the head.
Yeah, no, and even when I'm teaching university students, right? And I said, what do you want to do? And many of them, more than half of them, don't know.
Yeah.
And they've been going to school for a long time. So who do you want to be should be their main focus before the transition.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Joe, I want to say once again, thank you for your service to our great country. Thank you for your service to the veteran community today. And I just
My pleasure.
want to say it's a joy to work with you. And for those that want to reach out to Joe or the Veterans Chamber, you can either contact me. My email address will be at the end of this podcast, and I'll make sure you connected with Joe. So again, Joe, thank you for your time and all the best to you.
Well, thank you very much, Gary. Really appreciate it.
You've been tuning into the Inspiring Veterans Podcast with your host, Gary Rohmann. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, GaryRohmann.com. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.